ओम गुरु ब्रह्मा गुरु विष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। ओम भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। अस्तो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम. We ended our class with verse number 138 last time, and in these verses over here we are learning what this bondage is. Bondage, which we often talk about, what is it? Where is it coming from? Even though the Atma is part of Paramatma or Brahma, ever free, unlimited, but why do we feel bondaged? Okay, so let's start our class with the verse number 139. अखंड नित्य अद्वय बोध शक्त्यः सफूर्तम आत्मनम अनंत वैभवम समाविरनोति आवृत्ति शक्ति एषः तमोमय राहु इव अर्क बिंबम. Akhand, indivisible. Akhand, so anything which cannot be divided, that's akhand. Nitya, eternal. Advaya, one without a second. Bodh Shaktya, through the power of knowledge. Shakti of the Bodh. Bodh Shaktya. Safuratam, manifesting. Atmanam, itself. Anant Vaibhavam, of infinite glories. So Anant is infinite, Vaibhav is glory. Samavrinoti, covers. Avriti Shakti, the veiling power. Eshaha, this. Tamomai, the nature of tamsikta, ignorance. Rahu, Iv means like. Arkbimbam, the orb of the sun. So Shankaracharya ji is saying the veiling power, avirati, is one of the nature of tamas. Okay, so we don't know who we are because our real nature has been covered by the tamsikta, the ignorance. It covers the self whose glories are infinite. So the soul, the self, the Atma, it's infinite, glories are infinite, but it got covered with the tamsikta. And again he says, which is indivisible. That means the Atma is indivisible. It cannot be divided. Eternal, and one without a second. Just as Rahu covers the sun during a solar eclipse. So first he gave us the glory of the self, that it's never away from us. It's always present in us. It's not that we have to bring it from somewhere. This is who we are. Our real nature is that. We are that. So even though this is always present in us, it's not readily available to us because of this veiling power, tamsikta. How can ignorance cover the knowledge? So Shankaracharya ji is answering this question by this illustrative example from the nature. See, just like he says, sun covered by Rahu during the solar eclipse. It's like when the moon comes between the sun and the observer on the earth, the phenomena is termed as a solar eclipse. We think that the whole sun is covered. It's only covered from the vision of the observer. It's not gone. How can moon really cover the sun? Think about it. Moon is comparatively lot smaller than the sun. We know that. Moon does not and cannot cover the sun. The same way the tamsikta cannot cover the atma. But it only seems to us that it has been covered. But sun is so far away and the moon is nearer. The observer on the earth is so much smaller than the both. It just appears that moon is covering the earth. Moon is covering the sun for a person on the earth. So moon has obstructed the observer's vision of the sun. So from observer's standpoint, sun has been covered. The same way it seems like for an ignorant person, the ignorance looks so much bigger. And the Atma, which is infinite, full of glories, full of light, we think it's not there. It is only observer's point of view. Those who can rise above, little above, can see that sun was never covered. There is no solar eclipse. It's only when we are far away and when we think that we are insignificant. In Hindu mythology, the moon is the presiding deity of the mind. Moon. The sun is the illuminating factor equating with the Atma. So when we apply this above example subjectively, it really means that as long as there is this mind between me and myself, the glory of the self is veiled. So mind is the manifestation of avidya, the non-apprehension of the reality caused by the tamsikta. And that's why he's giving us this example. He's saying, transcend the mind. And there's no ignorance. Realize the self then. By transcending the mind, realize the self, and all sufferings will end too. This is the point he's making in this verse with the help of this example. We can understand that now these days because technology is there. We know that solar eclipse is not anybody who is up there. Okay, so this tamsikta, when we bring the light inside us, when we can really realize it, then there's no tamsikta at all. Then in the next verse he says 140, Tiro bhute swa atmani amaltar tejovati puman anatmanam mohat aham iti shariram. कल्यति ततः काम क्रोध प्रभवति भी अमुम बंधन गुणे परम विक्षेपाख्यः रजसः उरु शक्ति व्यथयति तिरोभूते. That means that is like a concealing power, tirobhuti, or something is hidden, tirobhuti. Swa Atmani, one's own self. Amal purest. See, mal means flaw. Amal means without flaw. And amal means the purest. Tejovati, of splendor. Uman, a person. Anatmanam, the not self. Mohat, due to ignorance. Aham iti, as I. Shriram, the body. Kalyati, identifies. Tataha means then. Kam, krodh, prabhati bhi. Kam is the lust. Krodh is the anger. So with the lust, anger, etc. And we know that those are the enemies of a spiritual seeker. Amum, this. Bandhan gune, by binding fetters. Param means supreme. Vikshepakya, called as vikshep. Vikshep is a projecting power. Vikshep. Rajsaha, of rajas. Uru Shakti, great power. Vyathati, persecutes. When a person's own self of purest splendor is hidden from his direct experience, that person, due to ignorance, comes to falsely identify himself with his body, which is not self. Then the merciless persecution of Rajas, projecting power, binds him down with the fetters of lust, anger, etc. Okay, so all these enemies of a seeker, they are Rajsik. When the truth is hidden, when the door is closed for some time, you will find all kinds of creatures in there. Spiders also. There could be some other bugs also. That's what happens when you don't pay attention to the light within. So when the immaculate divine light of the wisdom, the great light of consciousness is veiled, that doesn't mean it's not there, but it's veiled. And what happens? A person considers himself a body. And body means all three bodies. Physical body also, subtle body also, causal body also. We start thinking that this is who we are. And we forget our real self. And that's where the whole gang of the negative tendencies, desire, anger, greed, delusion, passion, and jealousy, all six of them, they come to bind that person's personality to his lower ego. And that's where all the pain and the agony come from all these flaws. So all the thoughts in the human mind can be classified in these six categories. And all of these six, they have the quality of binding the individual to the lower aspect of the personality. That's why it's very important to work on these six. And that's why the rishis, they call these six as enemies. Ripu, Shatru. We have to get rid of them. See, whenever we see the word quality as a gun, that really means a rope. Gunas means the rope in Sanskrit. These ropes, they shackle a human being. So all of them are emotionally, they are springing to shackle us, to bind us. Just like a rope binds, these gunas, they bind too. In the way of life, of which we can remove all these six, is called a spiritual life. Remove them all and then know what you are, the infinite divine. You are that. It exists there, but it's only covered. So we need to remove this covering. 141. Mahamoh graha grasan galit atam avgamnah dhiya nana avstham. Swayam abhinayan tad gunteha apare sansare vishya vishapure jal nidho nimajje unmajay ayam brahmati kumati kutsit gati. Maha means great or complete. Moha means ignorance. Graha means a shark, like a crocodile, a big animal in the water. Graha. Grasan galit, swallowed up. Atam avgamanaha, one whose self-knowledge is almost like when the self-knowledge has been swallowed. Atam avgamanaha. Dhiya, the intellect. Nana avastham, different states. Swayam means himself. Abhinayan, behaving. Tad gunteya, as its superimposed attributes. Apare, boundless. Sansare, in sansar, this world. Vishye vishpure, full of the poison of sense pleasures. See, for a worldly person, sense pleasures, we run after sense pleasures. For a seeker of the self, these sense pleasures are like wish, poison. So full of the poison of sense pleasures. Jal nidhau, in an ocean. Nimajje, sinking. Unmajje, rising. See, ni means going down. U means going up. I am this. Brahmati, drifts. Kumati, man of perverted intellect. See, mati means the intellect. Sad, mati, better intellect. Kumati, perverted intellect. Kutsit gati, one of miserable fate. Gati, gati is the fate, destiny, gati. An individual who has a perverted intellect, whose knowledge of his self has been swallowed by the shark of complete ignorance. So who is the shark here? The ignorance, tamsikta. Behaves as though the different states of his intellect were the natures of the self. So we think that intellect, which is part of the prakriti, we think it's the self. And drifts up and down, now rising, now sinking on the ocean of change, which is full of poison of sense pleasures. Indeed, what a calamitous fate. And that's what we have been doing for countless lifetimes, going up, coming down. And we have completely forgotten who we are. So it's like a self-knowledge is swallowed up by this shark of delusion. And we just dance to the tune of our intellect. Because intellect is the one which is saying, I like this, I don't like this. And we keep on dancing. It's almost like a drunkard behaves by forgetting that he is a decent, respectable person. A person who watches says, look at it. What is he doing? But under the intoxication of that drink, a person behaves like that. And this is the intoxication we have. We have forgotten ourselves. That's why the great gurus, the God incarnates, say, come again and again and they wake us up. They remind us to our true nature. They say, don't stay drunkard. Because otherwise we are constantly depending upon the sensuous pleasures, the vasanas, our tendencies. All these thoughts, they keep on arising. They compel us. They dictate us. And we feel that we are nothing. Even though we are part of God, we are infinite, but we have forgotten our real nature. It's almost like if there's a neglected boat in a storming ocean, just keeps on moving here and there. That's how we are. We are tossing about, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, because those are the waves in this sansar. But we are not crossing. When we are acting in this outer world, our actions are always to accumulate more. By accumulating the worldly things, we are accumulating our vasanas also. We keep on creating more and more thoughts, more and more activities, more fulfilling our fresh vasanas, and getting entangled in the old ones also. We are suffering, but we don't want to acknowledge that suffering. It's like the self is completely hidden from our understanding, our vision. How can my ignorance of a thing give me solid, perceptible sorrows? We'll look at the next verse, which gives us the answer to this. Number 143. 42, sorry. भानु प्रभा समजनित अभ्र पंक्ति भानुम तिरोधाय विजृंभते यथा आत्मा उदित अहंकृति आत्म तत्वम तथा तिरोधाय विजृंभते स्वयं. Bhanu means sun, sun, sun. Prabha, rays. Samjanit, generated. Abhra pankti, the formation of clouds. See, abhar means the clouds. Bhanum, sun. Tirodhai, having veiled. Vijrimhante, appear. Yatha means just as. Atmaha utit, arisen from the self. Ahamkriti, the ego. Atam Tattvam, the reality of the self. Tatha means so too. Tirodhai, having covered. Vijrimbhate expresses. Swayam means itself. as the formations of the clouds generated by the sun rays come to veil the very same sun. If there's no sun, there won't be any clouds. So as the formations of the clouds generated by the sun's rays come to veil the very same sun and appear clearly manifest in the sky, so too the ego arisen from the self covers the reality of the self and expresses itself in full manifestation. So it's the ego which is covering the self. Ego cannot have the power without the Atma. But we get so lost in the ego that we forget who is the giver of the light to the ego. It's almost like we forget the sun, who, with whose help the clouds came. So there's no other power giving source. It is the same Atma. So the problem is not in the ego, problem is not in the Atma, it's forgetting the Atma, who is the power giving. Because if there was no sunlight, no sun's heat, there would have been no clouds. So that's how the clouds are formed. We know this phenomena. So similarly, the ego, born out of Om, if you want to call it. Om, God, Atma, same thing. The reality. I alone am. But once the ego is formed, ego appears. Ego starts saying, where is God? Ego says, I'm the only truth. What is there besides me? It's almost like a child is born from the parents. Without the parents, child won't be there. But when the children become big, they think they are smarter than the parents. They start earning more money than the parents. They neglect the parents. It's the same thing over here. Out of this psychological phenomena are born all the sufferings of a person. That's why our rishis, what did they say? Parents are your first guru. They are the devatas. If you remember this whole thing, that it's very easy to remember who we are too. We have forgotten the basic tenets. And the ignorance just keeps on becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how the clouds of ignorance is becoming thicker and thicker. Let me read it again. As the formations of the clouds generated by the sun rays come to veil the very same sun and appear clearly manifested in the sky, so too the ego arisen from the self covers the reality of the self and expresses itself in full manifestation. Okay? Source should never be forgotten. And we'll see that in next verse. The next verse is exhaustively explaining further. In fact, the next two verses, over here, the powers of agitating and veiling is further explained. Okay? This great Acharya knows that we need repetition. So that's why again and again he is trying to explain these truths to us. So number 143. Kavalit din nathe durdinehe sandra meghe vyathati him jhanja vayuh ugraha yatha etan avirat tamsaha atmani avrite mood buddhim kshapyati bahu dukhe Tivra Vikshep Shakti. Okay. So I'm sure you are familiar with this Vikshep Shakti and Avarna Shakti now. These are the two veiling and projecting powers. Kuvalit. Kuvalit means swallowed up. Okay, it's almost like a clouds, they got swallowed up. Okay, and they what did they swallow? They swallowed the sun. Okay, so Kuvalit, swallowed up. Dinanathe is the sun. Din means the day of the god of the day, sun. Durdine, on a cloudy day. Sandra Meghe, by dense clouds, heavy clouds. Vyathati, persecutes. Him, Janja Vayu. That's a cold winds, cold blasts. Ugraha, shivering, violent. Yatha means just as. Etan, them. Avirat, utter. Tamsaha, ignorance. Atmani avrite, when the Atma is concealed or covered. Mood buddhim, the foolish person. Kshapyati, afflicts. Bahu dukhe, with endless sorrows. Tivra means dreadful. Vikshep Shakti, the projecting power. Vikshep. Just as on a cloudy day, when the sun is swallowed up by dense clouds, cold, shivering blasts persecute a person. So too, when the Atma is screened off by utter ignorance, the dreadful projecting power persecutes the foolish person with endless sorrows. So if somebody is feeling sorrowful, painful, hurting, that means not aware of the Atma, the reality, the real self. So it's a projecting power. So the Lord of the day, that's one thing we got to remember. Dinnath, sun, it's there, but it's covered. Because of that covering of the cloud, we feel cold, we shiver. Sometimes people say that our body hurts because of that. Or the mind goes into depression, a lot of people, they say, when sun is not up. If this outer sun can have that kind of effect on us, when we are not connected with our real self, of course, people feel painful. They go into the dark place. Even though it's always there. This light of ours is who we are, but we are disconnected from it. That's why he's using a very strong word, mood buddhi, for a person like that. The fools in whom the knowledge of the self is veiled. We are fools then. And this foolishness started with the tamsikta, ignorance. And that's where the suffering also, endless suffering, came into our life. Whenever I look at myself as an egocentric personality, that means that ignorance is very near me and the self is far away from me. And that's in that sense, he says that when the ego looks through the tamas, ego looks through the tamas and finds that the Atma is not there. An outcome of this is that a person is afflicted by the power of the agitations. So that's how they are connected. Power of agitation afflicts the individualized soul. Tamas covers the Atma. So it's not only that we don't know the Atma, but at the same time, we are afflicted with various kinds of sorrows. That's the outcome of that. And agitations. It's almost like a shivering, equal to the shivering in the cold wind. Our internal self is shaking. Let's do one more and then we'll have some dialogue. Etabhyam ev shaktibhyam bandha punsaha samagata yabhyam vimohita deham matva atmanam brahmati ayam. Etabhyam, from these two. Ev means alone, so only from these two. Shakti bhyam, two powers. Bandha, bondage. Punsaha, a person. Samagata, has sprung forth or proceeded from. Yabhyam, by which. Vimohita, deluded. Deham, body. Matva, mistaking. Atmanam, the self. Brahmati, wanders. Ayam, this. Man's bondage has sprung forth from these two powers. And what are these two powers? Veiling power and projecting power. These are the two powers. Okay. So man's bondage has sprung forth from these two powers. Deluded by them, he mistakes his body for the self and wanders from life to life. Okay. So because of these two powers, a person has reached his present stage of bondage and feels very limited, helpless. So Avarn Shakti and Vikshep Shakti considers himself to be his body only. Average person thinks only the physical body. Little more light comes, a person thinks I'm the mind, I am the intellect. People also say that I have Atma. We are Atma. We are only Atma. Nothing else. But we have forgotten that. See, normally everyone behaves himself to be the gross body. But when we pay a little attention to the emotions, a person will say, hey, I am an emotional personality also. But little rationality comes into the thinking, a person says, no, I'm an intellectual being also. But Shankaracharya is telling us, all of this, physical being also, emotional being also, intellectual being also, those are only the layers of your personality. You are not that. You are the Atma, part of God, infinite, endless. Otherwise, we keep on moving from one life to another, one time to another. As they say, cradle to one grave and another cradle to another grave, continuously. The cycle keeps on going. Because we don't recognize who we are. This ignorance is so much established in us that we just don't see the light which we are. So we'll stop it here. Now in the next section, he talks about bondage in action. That's what we'll see how he explains to us. So let me do the Shanti Mantra and then we'll have question answers. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Okay, who has a question, Jyoti?
Neeta Maheshwari, she wrote a question. What is the meaning of Vigrambate?
What is the meaning of what?
Vigrambate. Neeta, do you want to ask the question?
Nita, which verse is that? Is she there?
Seems like she's gone.
Okay, all right. Next one then. Anybody else?
Ji, my question is 141, where you say, just one, give me a minute.
Okay, 141.
The action, more vasanas. He's and suffers from the accumulation of vasanas. Maybe it's the ego is 142, if you don't mind. Ego says it's me. Where is God? Children, all suffering of human being comes from ego. Ego is generated by the self, covers the reality of the self, and appears by itself in full manifestation. Generated by the self, I don't get it.
Yeah, because if there is no Atma, can there be ego? No. Who gives the power to the ego? Atma. It's just like, that's why I gave you the example of a child and the parents. There cannot be a child if the parents were not there. But the child, after getting older and richer, thinks that, who are these old people? So ego cannot be ego without the Atma.
It forgets that it is part of the self, and thinks
It not part. No, ego is not part of the self. Ego has
been generated by
from that.
I see.
Okay,
And when it is,
there's no parts to the Atma. Atma by itself is complete. It's like a indivisible. Because if we say ego is the part of Atma, that means Atma has parts. No, Atma doesn't have parts. Atma is just a homogeneous.
Okay. And so what happens is when it becomes so big, the ego, it thinks that's what it is, and it forgets to give credit to the self.
Yeah, it forgets where the energy is coming from.
Forgets where the energy is coming
Yes.
from. Okay, where? Okay, that's generated by the self kind of got me going.
Yeah.
Forgets where it is.
Yeah.
Sourcing from. Okay. I got that. And there's one other thing I underlined. Graded. No, I got that. All right. If I see more, I will.
Yeah, call me, Urmil. I know you are. See, what Urmil is trying to do, she is summarizing all these verses with the bullet points. And pretty soon you'll have these bullet points for you to understand this. See, some people can understand when it's elaborated. Some people can understand when the bullet points are given very nicely.
One complements the others.
Yes, they do. They definitely do. Yes. So she is trying to do that for all of us. So we appreciate that. Yes, Jyoti. Yes, Manju.
Yes. Namaste, Hershey.
Namaste,
so
Manju.
What is funny, we have been teaching for so many years, and now I'm thinking this moment, what comes first, Asmita or Avidya?
Okay, Avidya comes first.
Can you hear me?
Avidya comes first.
Okay.
Avidya, the ignorance, because of the ignorance.
And avidya is the root cause.
Yeah, root cause. From ignorance, egoism comes. Okay.
Okay.
Ignorance is
So
the
the
offshoot of the avidya. The main root is the
right,
avidya. Okay.
right.
Ignorance.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Ignorance
Okay.
really means not
So
knowing who we are.
so so the three obstacles
We are,
in
you are,
the during on the
skipping.
path position. The
Your Wi-Fi is
oh,
lagging.
I'm sorry. Let me change the position. Okay. Okay. Sorry. How about now? Is
Now
it
is
good?
better.
Is
Yes.
it better? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. So the three obstacles: the mal, vikshepa, and avarn.
Uh-huh.
So vikshepa is the agitation of the mind, which is again
Yeah,
based on
vikshepa is the agitation,
right,
and varn is the covering.
the covering, which is the asmita,
Yes.
which is the asmita, right?
Yes. Yes. Covering.
Okay.
Yes. Definitely.
So that
Asmita.
in the three obstacles, and the rebirth is because of this
Because of all of these.
all this. Okay.
All of this
All
together,
this.
because we have forgotten, because of the mal also. Mal means the flaws.
All the flaws.
All the flaws. Vikshepa is the agitation, and avarn
Right.
is the covering. Combination
Right.
of all this, we have forgotten who we are, and we take birth again and again. And we forget that each time we take the birth, there is a chance for us to get rid of all these three. But we just
Right.
make somehow ignorance has gotten so much hold over the better part of us that we forget. We think we are here to just waste time, I would say, into these sensualities.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neetu.
Namaste, Hershey.
Namaste,
Um,
Namaste.
there are so many things that stir up in myself when I listen to all these talks and lessons and dissecting the ego and the Atma. The deepest level, my thing is like, why did I even fall? I mean, the Atma's concept looks so foreign to the mind right now. I know I am feeling it, but I'm at the intellectual level, it cannot even have that concept that I am Atma and live in that Atma and act in that Atma. And ego is always hungry for that power. And I see that hunger, which I spend in decades, lifetime in accumulating outside power through the sense object. But now I am more feeling that, yes, I know ego wants power, but I want the deeper power. I don't get the satisfaction in the worldly matter anymore. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and that is a good thing. That means you are feeling a little detachment, vairagya from the worldly things, which is good. That is where it starts. The whole journey starts from vairagya. That you have seen it, you have had it. It did not give you a complete satisfaction. So that is a good thing. And now that doesn't mean that you don't have to do the sadhana. Now is the time to do a little serious sadhana. Okay, so it's okay. And do not get overwhelmed with all these classes, because sometimes it could be overwhelming. We are learning from a teacher who is realized. Adi Shankaracharya ji. Even though he is giving us little bits and pieces, but still it can become overwhelming. So have a day well marked. At what time you're gonna do what? Okay, so almost like when you went to school, college, there were different periods, different subjects, different things you did. Now think you should think that you are a student of spirituality, and this time you're gonna do this, and this time you're gonna do this. Just live a life according to a strict timetable. You will see that all of this is more enjoyable.
I see.
We don't have to struggle. This is of a real nature. And you will feel it just spontaneously. You will feel it if your life is more disciplined.
Discipline is the word.
Yeah, disciplined is the word. Yes, definitely. If
Okay.
our life is not disciplined, then one day we are doing a lot of this. The next day we get tired of it. Then it gets very hard to come back to it.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Okay.
think it through what you want to do for at least for next month, what you want to do, and religiously follow that routine,
I see.
and
Okay.
then see the effect of that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get overwhelmed, and do not get off the path either. It's almost like when you are sowing a seed,
Mm-hmm.
you're planting
Mm-hmm.
it. It takes some time for the sprout to be
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
So the same way for the seed of spirituality also, it takes some time, and we got to be patient.
A lot of time. A lot of
Okay,
time.
it's all right, but you will see that if we do the right thing, we feel the enjoyment. See, when
Ah.
that seed sprouts, even those first two leaves, we look at it and we
Oh,
feel so
okay.
happy about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
we water it more. We give
Yeah.
little plant food to it. Right?
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is what we need to do. Okay,
The
just don't get
other.
overwhelmed. Okay, it's all right. You
Yeah.
are not the only one. We all feel that way.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, just
That's reassuring. The
yeah.
other thing, that story that you talked about Magarmach, and how the ego is Magarmach, right?
Yes.
But haven't we, I mean, at least I know, I have heard that, I have that concept that when Magarmach had bitten the elephant's leg, remember that? And he intensively prayed and Vishnu had to come down. And I think that is really where I feel about ourselves, from
Yeah.
detaching ego and yearning God, Narayana or Krishna, who are to come and rescue us and free us from the ego
Yeah,
bondage.
yeah, definitely. God is always ready to help us. We got to
Uh-huh.
have a faith in God
Yeah.
and just surrender to Him. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That
Yeah.
story is from Bhagavad Puran, which you are mentioning. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's Bhagavad Puran story.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
Yogi.
you.
Yes. Thank
Dr.
you.
Chandra.
Yes,
Hersh Ji,
Dr.
namaste, Hersh Ji.
Namaste, namaste.
I have a statement and maybe, just an observation. If God is in animate, inanimate, all, in all, he pervades in every place like an omnipotent, omnipresent. He is our Father. So in that case, the Atma is like a speck of God in all the beings, in all the living beings. But by listening to you, he has always been a silent observer when good things happen and bad things happen in our lives. Like parents, we raise our kids with some controls. Okay, go to bed 8 o'clock, get up here, go to school, read this, don't look at that, things like that. If that is the case, why would he why would he be a silent observer? Instead of, say, like somebody going to do a bad thing, murdering or killing somebody or whatever, he could have stopped. Hey, listen, this is not the right thing to do. You got to go this way, like a parent really does. I don't know why he wanted to be a silent observer, make us all go through the sufferings in our lives. And I know that he's trying to, we have to learn ourselves, but so many janmas to take and so many species to go through. He could have just avoided that, all these miseries. That's what, only a statement I'm making, that's all.
Yeah, yeah, I know it will be simpler that way. It won't be as beautiful either then. Then there's no reason to do the sadhana. If God is the one who's going to do everything for us, then He'll do it for everybody, right? So
Yes, yes.
this is His plan,
I
His
see. Okay.
play, and the rules and the laws, they're all for everybody the same. He's a very just God. It's not
Yes.
for one person, it's different than the other.
Got it.
As you sow, so shall you reap.
Yes.
It's for everybody. Okay? And He is there all the time. And it's up to us to connect with Him and feel His mercy too. Anybody can do that. So this is His formula of this world. Okay? So He just didn't want to do it like, hey, I'm going to correct, then somebody will say that it's not a just God, helped me and not helped him. Or if he had helped everybody, then there won't be any fun in this world either. Right?
Okay.
Can
Okay.
you
Yeah.
imagine?
Yes.
So this is that's how he created it, his plan. Okay.
Right. It's a Leela. I
Yeah,
guess
he's a
so.
Leela, his play. In play, you need all this ups and downs, good and bad. The
Thank you,
choices we
G.
need to
That's
make. If you do make that choice, we will reach there. Okay. So
thank you,
sure,
G.
it
Thank
would
you
be
very much.
simpler the way you are saying, but to me, I think he didn't choose that kind of a program. He did not. Okay. Yes, Jyoti.
Pramila?
Namaskar, Hershey.
Namaste.
This verse 143, could you please expand on that verse a little bit?
Okay, let me reread it. He says, just as on a cloudy day, when the sun is swallowed up by dense clouds. So he's giving us a little example here. Cold, shivering blasts persecute a person. He says the same way. See, sun has been swallowed by the clouds, and Atma is swallowed by the ignorance or covered by the ignorance. And that's why we feel endless sorrows. So whenever we feel sorrowful, we feel helpless, we feel miserable, that means we have been disconnected from the Atma. Okay? So that's why, what are we supposed to do? When the sun has been swallowed by clouds, what do? We go into our homes, warm homes, we wear better clothes. We protect ourselves from that shivering. Sometimes with a hot cup of tea or sit near the fireplace. The same way, when we feel persecuted by the sorrows which have been created by our own actions and the thoughts, take that time, sit in your altar, near your altar. Our Atma we have not seen yet, we have not realized yet, but we have definitely paid some attention to the altar outside. We don't even have to go to a church or a temple. In your own homes, we have that. That's a Hindu way of living. Just go into your temple area, sit over there and feel the presence. Cry there to God. God, I feel miserable. I know you are here. You are inside me too. How come I don't feel you? How come I don't see you? Cry. That is the answer. It's not that God is not there, but we have disconnected from that higher power. Okay? So,
And then you feel better.
yeah, you will feel better. We do feel better, right?
Yes.
Sometimes we cry on the shoulder of some friend or some relative or an elderly person or a wise person, and we feel better. Or we just go into our own mandir room. Every house should have a little altar.
Yeah.
My Guruji used to say the most beautiful place in our house should be our altar. And I have told you many times, he came to this country 4 times. Over here, when he was here, he did not make the comment, but he went back home. In the ashram, I heard some of the talks from him, because his Upadesh, they are all recorded. He said, it's really funny. In America, the most beautiful thing is their bathrooms. And that is true. We spend so much money to even renovate our bathrooms. Matching towels, matching this, matching that, fragrance there. Do we ever pay that much attention to our altar room? We clean our bathrooms. Do we clean our altar rooms? Do we put fresh flowers there? Do we make sure that there is a good incense burning there? So if we have that kind of altar, automatically we'll go there. And especially when you are used to going there, at least twice a day, if not more. Spend some time there, God. If we have established a God statue there, that means God is there. Spend some time with the God. Talk to God. Cry to God. He is waiting actually. God is always waiting. In our scriptures, they say that if a devotee goes one step towards God, God comes towards the devotee 7 steps. But we have to make one step though first. This is the law. That's what it is, Dr. Chandra, that he says you got to do the first move. Then he will definitely move. Okay, so this is that's the law, God's law. Okay, so,
Yes.
so Pramila, this is how I understand it. I'm sure there's
Yes.
so many different ways
No.
to understand these great teachers.
No, I did understand, but I wanted you to explain it
Yeah,
further.
you just wanted to test me, Pramila. I know that. Thank
No,
you.
no, I'm not testing you.
Just
I
kidding.
wanted to understand.
Just kidding. Just
Oh,
kidding.
no, I do start my day with Aarti and
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
My
And just
altar is
try
beautiful.
to do it more and more. You know, Aarti,
Yes.
morning, evening is good. Daytime
Yeah.
also many times, and especially when we go through the ups and downs, just connect with him. You will see.
Hershey, I learned it from my mother. My mother's 91. She still does the puja
Yeah,
and
see, look
the
at
mine
that.
and everything.
That's why mother is the first guru. Mother. Okay, mother. Okay, so
Thank
that
you.
is really good, Pramila. Thank you for sharing. And anybody else, any other question? Kamla?